Hello everyone, welcome back to Planet Planet Entertainment. My name is Chris, and in case you don't know, I review movies and I rank them on a scale of 0 to 100 in increments of 5. Today we're going to be doing another Halloween special by talking about The Sixth Sense. This movie is incredible. It is incredible. And before I tell you a little bit about the film, I just want to say this movie. Okay, so this movie came out the same year I was born, right? It came out actually about 2 months before I was born. I was born October of 99. This came out in August of 99. And I want to say that this movie is probably the movie that you never want to go into knowing anything about it. If you were to ask me what's one movie that you absolutely want to go into without hearing any spoilers, I would say The Sixth Sense. If you haven't seen this movie, don't worry, this is going to be a spoiler-free review, I promise. I just want to convince you, if you haven't seen it, to watch this movie, because this movie is so much better when you go into it not knowing anything. And the reveals in this movie are iconic. If you haven't seen The Sixth Sense, don't worry, I won't spoil anything, but I really, really recommend you watch this movie. And if you don't know anything about this movie, keep it that way. Go watch it, keep yourself numb to anything about this movie, and just watch it. Because this movie is 1,000 times better when you don't know anything about it. Okay. So let's get into it. So The Sixth Sense, like I said, was released in 1999, and it stars Bruce Willis, Haley Joel Osment, Toni Collette, and Olivia Williams. It was directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and it was produced by Sam Mercer. Also, Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy were producers on this as well, which I thought was cool. This movie tells a story of a young boy, portrayed by Haley Joel Osment, and he's having psychological issues. And so this child psychologist, portrayed by Bruce Willis, he helps him. And he's hoping that he'll find some sort of fulfillment out of helping this patient. And basically, the kid's problem is with ghosts. He has this issue with ghosts. And I don't consider this to be a spoiler. Some people might. I don't consider this to be a spoiler. But he has this issue with ghosts. And so, but nobody would believe him, right? So he's hoping that Bruce Willis can help him with his issue with ghosts. And they don't get this right onto the open to you until like about halfway through the movie, but once they do get this out into the open to you, it's all uphill from there. So the acting in this movie is phenomenal. Phenomenal. The acting in this movie is so good. I can't speak highly enough of it. Haley Joel Osment gives one of the best performances in cinema history in this movie, and he's only a little kid. I don't remember how old he was in this movie, but he's a little kid. And he actually got nominated for the Oscar for Best Actor in a Leading Role for this movie, or was it supporting role? I think it was supporting. I can't remember which. And I believe he's the youngest person to ever get the nod. He was really good in this movie. Bruce Willis was really, really good in this as well. The role was actually written for Bruce Willis. M. Night Shyamalan wanted Bruce Willis for this movie, and he wrote the role for him. And it really, really works. He was so good in this movie. Toni Collette, who plays Haley Joel Osment's mother, was brilliant in this movie. And Olivia Williams, who played Bruce Willis's wife, I thought she was pretty good in this too. All the acting in this movie is really, really good. But Bruce Willis and Haley Joel Osment, they knocked it out of the park. They were incredible in this film. This movie is often known as the greatest thriller of all time. It actually even says that on my thing right here, the #1 thriller of all time. A lot of people do consider this to be the greatest thriller of all time. This isn't actually considered a horror movie, but I consider it a horror movie because there's a ghost in it, and there's like blood on people and stuff. So I consider this to be a horror movie. But it's definitely a thriller for sure, and I can see why this is known as the greatest thriller of all time, because it's a masterpiece of a film. This was also M. Night Shyamalan's first big film. He did like a little bit of work in like 3 or 4 smaller movies before this, but this was his first big movie, and this was the movie that made him a superstar. Now, I know he gets a lot of crap nowadays because he made movies like The Last Airbender that was like complete garbage, but his earlier work was really, really good. I love Signs. Signs is another movie I love, and I gotta talk about that movie for another Halloween special. That's a really good movie as well. There's this one scene in this movie where Bruce Willis and Haley Joel Osment have this great relationship with each other. They have really good chemistry, and their relationship is so great, so great. And they have this one scene where Bruce Willis is trying to play this game with them because at first, the kid's having a hard time opening up to him, and then he learns to trust him throughout the movie, right? And he's like, okay, we'll play this game. So if I can tell you what you're thinking, you have to take this step toward me, toward this chair in front of me. And if I guess wrong, you have to take a step back toward the doorway. And if you get up to the chair, you have to sit down and talk to me. And if you get to the doorway, you can go. And so he's doing this little thing. He's like doing this cute little thing, like he's about to read his mind. And it's a really, really, really well-written scene. There's also this part where the mother notices she's looking at these pictures of her and her son, because she's a single mother, or her husband, I think he left her. And she's looking at these pictures of her and her son on the wall, and there's this little white streak that's always like by her son in these pictures. And she's like, what is this? But that's a ghost. That's a ghost near him. Really, just fantastic stuff. It's very emotional. This movie isn't just like about ghosts and stuff. It's a psychological movie. This movie really delves deep into depressing topics, like losing a loved one and things you may not have accomplished in life before you died, or something like that. Stuff like that. All sorts of like things that you may not notice, but it definitely delves into these sorts of things. And of course, again, there was the "I see dead people" line, which is like one of the most iconic movie lines of all time. This movie came out right before I was born, but I know when I was really little, like a baby, people were always quoting this line, "I see dead people." It was like when Forrest Gump came out, and everybody was always saying, "Run, Forrest, run." It was the same thing here. Everybody was always like, "Hey, I see dead people." That was really popular when I was really, really little because of this movie. There's also this really good scene in this movie where Bruce Willis is listening to this tape recorder. I won't spoil it for you, but this is basically how he really starts to get closer to Haley Joel Osment, is by listening to this old tape recording from one of his old patients. And it's a really, really creepy, but a really good scene. My favorite scene in this movie is where they go to this funeral. Haley Joel Osment and Bruce Willis, they go to this funeral. This funeral for this little girl, and Haley Joel Osment exposes something in this movie. I won't tell you what it is because I don't want to spoil it for you, but he exposes something in this scene, and it's actually probably more scary than the ghost in this movie, because it's the thought of like this happening is really terrifying. Really, really terrifying. And that's part of the reason why I consider this to be a horror movie, is because of things like that. Like, that's really, really good writing. And I want to talk about the writing in this movie. The writing in this movie is phenomenal. Phenomenal writing. Just all the writing in this movie is phenomenal. The twist at the end of this movie is arguably the greatest twist in the history of cinema. It is right up there with Luke, I am your father. Like, the twist at the end of this movie is so shocking, and it comes out of left field so hard. But once this is revealed to you, suddenly you start thinking back on the movie, and they start showing you old scenes from the movie, and you're like, oh my gosh, genius. And it's genius. That's why I'm saying the writing in this movie is just genius. Like, M. Night Shyamalan really did a phenomenal job with this film. And one more thing I want to add is, when you watch this movie, be on the lookout for the color red. The color red represents death in this movie. And I never noticed this until until I saw other people on the internet point this out, because I watched other movie reviews for this film like in the past. Like I think when I first saw this movie, I went on YouTube and started watching movie reviews for this, and I didn't notice this until people started people pointed this out to me. But the color red represents death in this movie, and every single time you see the color red in this movie, it means that death is near. Every single time. So when you watch this movie, look out for the color red, because every time you see the color red, it means that there's a ghost nearby or something. It doesn't necessarily mean there's a ghost nearby, but it somehow represents death in some sort of way. And that's really, really clever writing. That's what, again, I can't praise the writing in this movie enough. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal, phenomenal writing. M. Night Shyamalan, he did an outstanding job with his first big project. I seriously cannot praise this movie enough. It is a masterpiece. Bruce Willis can really act. Really act. I know he's known as like an action movie star, but he can act. Like Bruce Willis is an actor, and he's really, really good in this movie. Haley Joel Osment, phenomenal. Phenomenal. The chemistry between these two is so great. It's such a good, scary, but deep film. The Sixth Sense, absolutely, without a doubt, gets a 100. A 100. This movie is great. Great movie. It's scary. It's emotional. It's a roller coaster. And again, the twist at the end of this movie is one of the greatest movie twists of all time. When I first watched this movie, I did not know anything about it. And I did not know the twist at the end of this movie. And so when I first watched this movie and that twist was revealed to me, I was like, what? Like, I was shocked. I was shocked beyond belief, but it's such a good twist. It's a really, really good. If you haven't seen The Sixth Sense, boy, are you missing out. This is a fantastic film. I cannot recommend it enough. It's a good movie to watch around in the fall, to watch around this time. Beautiful movie as well. I know it's dark and it's emotional, but it's really beautiful. The cinematography, that's another thing I want to talk about. The cinematography in this movie, I forgot to write that down. I didn't even think about that till now. The cinematography in this movie is amazing. Amazing cinematography in this movie. Just such a good movie. Yeah, okay, I'm going to stop before I go on, because I could ramble on about how good this movie is all day, but I'm not going to. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Potty Player Entertainment for more, and hit the like button. Leave movie review suggestions down in the comments down below. Follow me on Instagram at Potty Player Entertainment for channel updates, and much love. Whew. Oh man, you guys. It is cold in here. Oh crap.